The first principle in the science of getting rich. Thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from source. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought of form in this substance produces the form. Source moves according to its thoughts. Every form or process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought impressed upon source. As source thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout original substance, and source, moving according to that thought, took the form of systems of planets and maintains that form. Source takes the form of its thought and moves according to the thought. Holding the idea of a circling system of suns and worlds, it takes the form of these bodies and moves them as it thinks. Thinking the form of a slow-growing oak tree, it moves accordingly and produces the tree, although centuries may be required to do the work. In creating, the source seems to move according to the lines of motion it has already established. The thought of an oak tree does not cause the instant formation of a full-grown tree, but it does start in motion the forces which will produce the tree along established lines of growth. Every thought of form impressed upon source causes the creation of the form, but always, or at least generally, along lines of growth and action already established. Every thought of form impressed upon source causes the creation of the form, but always, or at least generally, along lines of growth and action already established, just like the oak tree. The thought of a house of a certain construction, if it were impressed upon source, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause the turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce into such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. And if there were no existing channels through which the creative energy could work, the house would be formed directly from primal substance without waiting for the slow processes of the organic and inorganic world. No thought of form can be impressed upon source without causing the creation of the form. Man and woman is a thinking center and can originate thought. All forms that you fashion with your hands must first exist in thought. You cannot shape a thing unless you have the thought of that thing. And so far, man has confined his efforts wholly to the work of his hands. He has not applied manual labor to the world of forms, seeking to change or modify those already existing. He has never thought of trying to cause the creation of new forms by impressing his thought upon source. When a man has a thought form, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which is in his mind. He has, so far, made little or no effort to cooperate with Source, to work with the Father. He has not dreamed that he can do what he seeth the Father doing. He reshapes and modifies existing forms by manual labor. He has given no attention to the question whether he may produce things from Source by communicating his thoughts to it. We propose to prove that he may do so, to prove that any man or woman may do so, and to show how, our first step, we must lay down 3 fundamental propositions. First, we assert that there is one original source or substance from which all things are made. All the seeming many elements are but different presentations of one substance. All the many forms found in organic and inorganic nature are but different shapes made from the same stuff. And this stuff is thinking stuff. A thought held in it produces the form of the thought. Thoughts impressed upon the source or substance produce shapes. You are a thinking center capable of original thought. If you can communicate your thoughts to source, you can cause the creation or formation of the thing you think about. To summarize this, there is a source from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought impressed upon this source produces the thing that is created by the thought. You can form things in your thoughts, and by impressing your thoughts upon this source, you cause the things you think about to be created. It may be asked if I can prove these statements, and without going into detail, I answer that I can do so, both by logic and experience. Reasoning back from the phenomena of form and thought, I come to the one source or substance, and reasoning forward from this, I come to your power to cause the formation of the thing you think about. By experiment, I find the reasoning true, and this is my strongest proof. If one person who reads this book gets rich by doing what it tells them to do, that is evidence in support of my claim. But if everyone who does what it tells them to do gets rich, that is positive proof until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory is true until the process fails, and this process will not fail, for everyone who does exactly what this book tells them to do will get rich. I have said that you will get rich by doing things in a certain way, and in order to do so, you must be able to think in a certain way. Your way of doing things is a direct result of the way you think about things. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step toward getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearances. You have the natural and inherent power to think what you want to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearance is easy. To think truth, regardless of appearance, is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work you will be called upon to perform. There is no labor from which most people avoid most than from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind which observes it. and this can only be prevented by holding the thought of the truth. To look upon the appearance of dis-ease will produce the form of dis-ease in your own mind and ultimately in your body, unless you hold the thought of the truth that there is no dis-ease. It is only an appearance, and the reality is health. To look upon the appearances of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your own mind, unless you hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there is only abundance. To think health when surrounded by the appearances of dis-ease, or to think riches when in the midst of appearances of poverty requires power. But those who acquire this power become a master mind. They can conquer fate. They can have what they want. This power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact which is behind all appearances. And that fact is that there is one source from which and by which all things are made. Then we must grasp the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form, and that you can so impress your thoughts upon it as to cause them to take form and become visible things. When you realize this, you lose all doubt and fear, for we know that you can create what you want to create. You can get what you want to have and can become what you want to be. As a first step toward getting rich, you must believe the 3 fundamental statements given previously in this chapter, and in order to emphasize them, I repeat them here. There is a source from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought impressed upon this source produces the thing that is created by the thought. You form things in your thoughts, and by impressing your thoughts upon this source, you cause the things you think about to be created. You must lay aside all other concepts of the universe than this monistic one, and you must dwell upon this until it is fixed in your mind, has become your habitual thought. Read these creed statements over and over again. Fix every word upon your memory and meditate upon them until you firmly believe what they say. If a doubt comes to you, cast it aside as a sin. Do not listen to arguments against the idea. Do not go to churches or lectures where a contrary concept of things is taught or preached. Do not read magazines or books which teach a different idea. If you get mixed up in your faith, all your efforts will be in vain. Do not ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply take them on trust and faith. If you follow the instructions laid out in this book and make them a part of you, you will definitely get rich. The science of getting rich begins with the absolute acceptance of this faith.